Welcome back to Season 2 of Dis Media, a Startup Story, the podcast where I take you along our journey of starting Dis Media from the ground up. You get to hear all about our challenges and accomplishments as we either grow Dis Media or go bust. Either way, you're going to have a front row seat to hear it all. And along the way, we're going to have some special guests who share with us their wisdom and insights and what helped them along their startup journey to success. So get ready as we get into it and try to help those get better at what they do. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Dis Media, a startup story. I am your host, Ben Olmos, and joining me, as always, my counterpart in crime, Alan. Alan, how are you?
Wonderful. Good to see you and excited to meet Herb today and learn from him. So thanks for having me on too.
Yes. And joining us also today is a very special guest of ours, Herb Cogliano. And Herb, we're going to get into a lot today because you have quite an impressive background and a lot of stuff to share. And it fits right into what we do with Dis Media around entrepreneurism and management and leadership. So I don't want to step on your toes too much. Tell us a little bit about you and we'll start getting into it here in a moment.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. And my mother always said, flattery will get you everywhere. So thank you for the very kind comments. I'm fortunate to be here because at a young age, I knew what I was born to do, and it was to be an entrepreneur and to start and grow businesses that had impact in helping communities and people unleash their potential. And we started in a family business, 54-year legacy of providing meaningful employment, helping people go from thinking it's a job to a career to ultimately finding vocation. And when you can do that with people, there's just such a sense of gratitude. And then ultimately we got into education with career skills and retooling and upgrading your skills for the next best phase of an evolving workforce. Had a tremendous amount of joy. And then came across this incredible book called Scaling Up that most of us small mid-market companies worked hard, were smart, but we didn't know what we didn't know about getting from a $1 million startup to $5 million. And what does it take to get to 10 million and 100 employees to potentially $500 million someday? And a lot of us get stuck along the way. And so I've had an amazing journey of scaling up companies, learning with amazing leadership teams, and having a lot of fun doing it.
That sounds awesome. So the family business that you had been doing for a while, tell us a little bit more about that. Well, where did that start and how involved are you in it still today?
So I almost feel like it was from, I joke and say that it happened when I was in the womb, because my father literally started the business the year directly after I was born. And being a part of a family business, nights, weekends, dinners, you heard and learned a lot about people and business itself. And I always enjoyed it. And through that journey, started to work in the company at a very young age, nights, weekends, vacation. And my father had a practice of putting us with different leaders in different departments every time. So we got to see and sample different personalities, leadership styles, what was good, what was bad, different functions, finance, HR, IT, operations, sales. I didn't know it, but I was going through a mini MBA as a young kid. And I can't believe how grateful I was for that opportunity, knowing most people never get that. But I took full advantage and worked very hard while I was in it. Graduated business school, went full-time into the business, over time, industries get commoditized and we started to feel pressure. We were landlocked, we were regional, and the business started to kind of plateau. And that's when we brought in scaling up methodology to help us break through to the next level of growth that we had never seen before. We ended up becoming a best places to work. We ended up being on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies multiple years in a row. But more importantly, we learned that we can be a company that does well financially, but does good by the people that we work with. I call that the double bottom line, profit with purpose. And that was really fun. 2018, we exited our companies. That was December 2019. The next month, I opened up my coaching practice. I had a business coach and I wanted to carry on their work. They had passed away a few years earlier. A wonderful gentleman named Bill Chaplin. Him and my father, amazing coaches and mentors. But I wanted to carry on their work and help other people. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years while practicing scaling up for over 20 years as a CEO.
Wow. That's amazing. There's a couple things there I want to try and unpack because one of the things that folks who may be listening to our podcast and following our story, we started Disc Media from absolutely nothing, and growing it really from that. And we're continuing to grow, and our audience is getting bigger, so that's nice. You in your business, you mentioned that you grew it to a point where it kind of plateaued. What do you think were some of those things that got you to that plateau? And what were some of those things that were preventing you from hitting the next level? How did you reinvigorate your stride?
Yeah. First of all, market dynamics. If you're not changing, competition is coming in and more of it, and you're not changing your value proposition, you can add value to your client. But if you're not distinctive, other people can do the same thing as you, add value, and now you're commoditized. So we needed to pivot to an area where we could add value and yet still be distinctive, because that's where you get your margin and your value market positioning. So we were doing general staffing, manufacturing, office, financial. We were all things to all people. And then we pivoted to a pure play, high tech IT technology staffing firm. We went from 3 states regional to all 50 states in Canada in the next 60 months. That pivot geographically for expansion and product wise in a niche value product segment allowed us to get our next level growth that we had not been addressing for too many years prior.
It's funny that you say this because it makes me think about, and I think this gentleman is a Massachusetts native, thinking back to Jack Welch and GE.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
So back in the day, Jack Welch and GE and what many companies were doing at that time, it was all about diversification. It was all about trying to be all things in a lot of different places. And Jack Welch did basically call everything down to being number one or number two in everything that they were competing. And if they couldn't get to number two, they were selling off things and reinvesting those assets into other places. What you found, though, was to do things to consolidate a little bit more, to narrow your focus to a very specific niche and then just blow the heck out of that.
Yeah. Yes.
So when making that consideration, what do you go through to kind of bring you to that realization that we've got to hang our hat on a narrower set of things that really define what we excel at?
Yeah. Um, what I've learned is to make good decisions, you need good data. So we were looking at the trending data in the order activity, the margin activity, the client recurring business and frequency of use activity, and it was all trending down. And if you think about it, it wasn't like somebody hit us with a torpedo and we just were sinking. This was somebody was putting small holes in the hull and we were incrementally, just gradually starting to get slower and lower. And over time, if you take your eye off it, you'll end up sinking, but it's death by a thousand cuts, I would describe it. So we got very intentional about looking at the 12-month moving averages on some of the most important key metrics in the company. And when you see those metrics quarter over quarter, month after month, trending in the wrong direction, then you need to consider a pivot.
So, thinking about, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit, although still relatively in the same playing field. You mentioned the book Scaling Up,
Yep.
and that is Vern Harnish. What did you get from that that was the inspiration? It sounds like to me the inspiration that really pivoted more than just the business, but so many things, even for you personally.
Yeah. Ben, we've all read a lot of books, but it was the top one or two life changing books I've ever read. And you can learn something, but what I found was we needed to master something in order to make a profound difference in the company. So these were business principles that separately you'd say, oh, I know I should be in a valuable market position. I know I should hire A players. I know I should have good margins to create good cash. Individually, they make sense. But what scaling up does is put all them together in a methodology that helps you unpack them with a framework that you can adjust as you're growing to different levels. So individually, it's like a puzzle where somebody throws 1,000 pieces on the table and you're like, yeah, I'll take one at a time and figure it out. This is a book that gave me a picture of the puzzle completed on the outside and made it so much easier for me to navigate the growth.
That's pretty powerful to say this is the on the very short list of things that are transformative to the way you view the world, or at least the business world. Did you find that it was something that was like I guess what I'm trying to ask is what was the hook that really resonated with you and said, I need to get into this more?
I think I was frustrated because everybody on our team I considered to be hardworking and I thought they were very smart. And yet, with all the hard work and the IQ, the business wasn't growing. And so that's like being on a treadmill, the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing and get a different result. It doesn't happen. And what scaling up taught us was there's four basic decisions that you need to get right around people, strategy, execution, and cash. And when your business has shrunk, plateaued, you have to assess, you like a doctor, you have to look at your business and where is the illness? Is it people, strategy, execution, and cash? Number one, most people don't know how to diagnose their scaling up gap correctly. You may think it's a strategy problem, but it's not your strategy, it's the person running sales. You might think it's a cash problem, but it's really execution because you can't turn over your inventory quick enough to create cash. So you end up diagnosing incorrectly and then putting the wrong solution to the wrong problem. And that makes your problem exasperated and even worse. So we teach people how to self-diagnose their real gap, and then we give them very simple tools like a doctor medicine on how to solve that illness and then get to the next stage. We assess again and then cure again and get to the stage after.
In the work that you've done with your own company now, in thinking about all of those kind of core principles that you talk about, in the people that you've had the opportunity to work with, what would you say is the resounding theme of most commonly people are doing this and they should do that thing differently?
Number one thing that I get when beginning with a great company is that the CEO is spending way too much time working in the business and not enough time working on it. It's strictly a matter of bandwidth. They're normally doing 3 to 5 different functions. They're doing biz dev, they're doing finance, they're doing operations, chief cook and bottle washer. And you know what? When you're in startup, you need to be that person, but you can't continue to be that person on your way to 10 million and beyond. And you get stuck in it. Like you're isolated and you think that's all it's ever going to be because that's all I've been doing. And so you have to look from a third party perspective, be reflective to say, how can I slowly create bandwidth, delegate other duties of my 3 to 5, and then slowly spend more time working on growth initiatives, which are market facing activities, joint ventures, acquisitions, partnerships, all the rest.
Yeah, I'm laughing here. Audience can't hear me laughing, but I'm laughing to myself. And Alan and I are kind of making eye contact because I'm glad you said in startup mode it's okay, because I will tell you, like, I am the guy who's running the website, building the websites, creating the content, social media strategy, like doing everything. And every week I'm sending updates to all of my board members and saying, okay, this is what I did this week. But you're right. You do have to get to a point where you move from tactical to strategy and get out of the weeds and get to a point where you're more directive. One of the things that I often talk about is that in business, and I keep in mind my perspective is from an operations background because that's been my career history. But I call it the four core, which are trust and communication. So you have to have trust. You can't build trust without good communication. So there's this symbiotic relationship between those two things. And then it's about having good processes and routines. And a process is something that is predictable so that you know when something comes in, where it goes. And so the flow works well. And the routines, it's predictable that everybody has an understanding of when certain things happen. And that helps to kind of build comfort, I think, for a lot of people who are in the organization. But what you touch on is something even next level. It's almost what I would say is more senior leadership thinking. It's moving out of the tactical realm and into the strategic realm where you are forward thinking about the business, not just being reactive to the stuff that's going on. So when you're talking to entrepreneurs and when they come to you and they're like, Herb, I need help. I got my business it's in trouble, or we're not getting all that we can out of folks. What stage do you find people come to you in normally in their business life cycle?
Yeah, I normally start working with people after startup. I look at startup as the first million in revenue
Mhm.
because the first million is, do I really have a marketplace with a value proposition that has enough traction that at least $1 million in the market want it? And quite frankly, that's a big focus on business development and marketing to see if you can get that type of traction. When you can get at least that type of traction, lead gen, closed deal pipeline, now you're working on building out infrastructure, because now that I've shown I can get at least $1 million worth of deals in the door each year, now I want to put a little gasoline on that. And how can I take that 1 million to 5 million? So now I got to increase the account management, service delivery, operations, and continue to build out biz dev. But I need now to be able to do more of that. And that's typically where I pick up with a client. They also, just quite honestly, they have enough cash coming in that they can feel a little more comfortable in making investments in coaching and education and development programs. It gets really hard when you're under that $1 million mark to do that.
Sure. As you're explaining this, something that is coming to mind that I know I have dealt with in some of the business consulting that I've done, and I've just seen it in entrepreneurs as well, which is founders and leadership of small businesses, they get stuck on the things that got them to where they are, and they're having a difficult time changing to get them to that next level. And there's a lot of reluctance at times. Is pushback. There are people who say, that's not going to work. You don't understand my industry. That's just not how we do it here. How do you get past that? Because I can tell you, I mean, I've hit that wall a few times with people I've worked with.
I think it comes back to the entrepreneur's why. What are they looking to get from the business? Do they truly want to be a solopreneur? Are they enjoying the freedom and flexibility? And if that's their why, then I'd say stay with it. You can be a very good business development solopreneur, a consultant, a practitioner, have a great living, no employees, minimal drama. Life is good. The downside, it's not overly scalable. So you're going to cap out maybe a couple of million, 1 to 1.5. It depends on your billing and your consultancy. But when I talk to people about, no, I want to be a 5, 10, 50, $100 million company for a good reason, here's the purpose behind it, then we got to get real about the ability to delegate, the ability to build bandwidth. After owner bandwidth, Ben, you know what the second biggest challenge they face? The ability to develop a leadership team around them.
Mm,
Because in the beginning, they're so used to point and shoot. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Follow up on this, get that done. Because you're making all the decisions and you're hiring people that are good at following directions and getting stuff done. But
right.
now you're saying to them one day in a management meeting, you guys got to be more autonomous, more independent, make more decisions on your own and be self-sufficient. But it hasn't been like that in the company for the last 4 years.
That is absolutely sounds familiar to me. Something I want to also touch on, which you mentioned a little bit ago, and I know this is a topic that is near to and dear to Alan's heart, which is you had mentioned mentoring and
Yeah.
how you had some good mentors in your past. And I would imagine, I feel like most people that I run into, even those who are very successful, they continue to have a mentor. They continue to have people who are helping them, guiding them, coaching them into, if nothing else, just to be a sounding board for ideas or things that are coming across to them. How the through the principles that you work with businesses on, um, I know you play that mentoring role, but how do you coach them to sync mentorship? Or I'm sure you don't get them to just solely rely on you, right? They've got to kind of build a portfolio of mentorship. So how do you get them to that point?
I think the first thing is awareness. So that's one of the items that's under our scaling up assessment. Do you have a peer network mastermind group? And immediately we find out if they're involved, like a group like YPO or EO. Yeah. Are you familiar with those groups?
Alan is shaking his head.
Like, like,
I am less familiar.
So EO is entrepreneur organization. Vern Harnish founded EO many years ago, and it's gone on to be a global phenomenon of masterminding and group networking for business owners. Even some of my own coaching programs incorporate peer mastermind groups within our planning days that we do. We'll put non competing companies in different strategic facilitated planning where you not only get the benefit of what I do, but you get the benefit of several other CEOs in non related business to give you kind of a third party perspective you never had. So I think it's really important. I know you mentioned online training. I am the professor for the Scaling Up Master's Business course. In that course, part of that offering is mastermind. We call them home groups, but we're masterminding owners and leaders from all around the world put together to get the benefit of that peer mentoring.
And so what do you find comes let me start back on that question. What do you feel people discover of themselves and about their business by taking part in that mentoring process that you go through?
Number one, that they're not the only ones going through it, that other companies share the same challenges with finding new clients, hiring A player employees, having enough cash. And I think the second thing they get, how you can see things so clearly for other people, but you don't always see it clearly for yourself. I'll be in a peer mastermind and I'll see an owner talk about a challenge and then somebody listen to it and within literally seconds, give them some very clear, ask a few qualifying questions first, but give some very clear shared experiences about how they dealt with it. And you see the owner look at them and say, that was spot on. I just needed somebody to affirm that I was really going down the right path. And yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what I'm dealing with. If you don't have access to it, you never know.
So thinking through the process that you walk people through to kind of get them to be better business people, I guess overall, what would you say is that framework that you help people discover?
So it's called the Scaling Up Performance Platform, if I'm going to name it.
Mhm.
But what we ultimately do, every owner has a vision of what they want their company to be. It's normally up in their head somewhere. Some write a strategic business plan if you're business school type trained, but most of them it's up in their head. And I got to be honest with you, they're not always very clear visions when you first talk about it. They have elements of it. But what we do is help them thoughtfully take a vision out of their head, put it on paper. We have what's called a one-page strategic plan, literally simple enough to put it on one page. So we take that vision from your head, put it on a simple one-page plan, so simple that I can share it with the rest of my company. They would understand it, and together we bring that vision to life. And that's our journey together to bring that vision and purpose to the people we serve.
So, in doing a little research prior to our conversation, there was a mention of, and one of the things I was reading, I couldn't remember if I was reading or watching it, but kind of boiling it down to two words and having really a theme, if you will. And I guess what you're kind of alluding to is what many might think of as the elevator pitch. Would that be a good way to sum it up, or is it different than that?
No, are you familiar with your BHAG?
I am, yeah.
Jim Collins' big, hairy, audacious goal. President Kennedy in the 1960s had a BHAG to put a man on the moon. We didn't know how the heck we were going to do it, but that was the BHAG, and a group of wonderful, talented people spent a few years and figured out how to bring it to life. Your company vision is to serve 1 million people. And let's say your vision, and I'm just going to take a stab at it, Ben and Alan. If your vision is to educate 1 million people in startups and how to do them successfully, then we could build a vision and a company roadmap about bringing that 1 million people served to life. And I'm going to talk about who's my core customer. I'm going to talk about the value proposition I give them. I'm going to talk about the core values and the purpose that all the employees will embody to do it together. And then I'm going to talk about the 3-year targets, the 1-year targets, the 1-quarter targets that will let me and my team know as milestones that we're on track to get to that great destination. If you can make it that simple, not easy work, but simply explain it, you can get a bunch of amazing people together to do it.
Yeah. No, that's reassuring. I think, I don't ever like to feel like I'm like, "Hey, yeah, great. I'm doing awesome." Because I always like to know that Alan knows this about me. Like I'm always very critical of myself and always challenging myself. I never think that I've done anything that great until I feel like it's grown a bit. But I say that because the things that you're mentioning, having it in your head, yes, I do have a pretty good vision of things in my head. Although when I pitched my board on joining Dismedia and I laid out the master plan of what I wanted to create here, I did give them kind of this 5-year projected, like we're going to start here, then we're going to move along to this. And I think Alan, we're kind of on track with that. We're
Yeah,
age.
I love listening to the conversation, and I didn't want to interrupt because I'm learning as we go here. But I got to say that in my due diligence, Herb, I spent a little bit of time and I watched the entire Suzanne Marica podcast that you did
Oh,
with her and crafted a whole page of questions and
This
notes
is
for
what
you
Alan
as
does. He is a copious note taker. This is why I love it.
I'm also a student of this guy here.
oh,
Oh yeah,
excellent. Excellent.
yeah, and I've seen it in action. But if I could pull on a couple of themes,
Sure.
number one, I am so impressed with your servant leadership throughout everything you've talked about. This double bottom line of profit with purpose and pivoting to when you talked about the ego of CEOs at the startup not wanting to let go and having to pivot to the development of talent. And then you drill down when you were speaking earlier about A players. And I shudder sometimes when I hear that because I saw people in the military that would only surround themselves with what they called A players. And as a mentor, like Ben has mentioned to me, I'm very passionate about developing people wherever they are and
Agree.
growing that talent. And so when you're looking at someone who's made you successful and they're already an A player, maybe they don't have development as potential as much as someone that might be a new C or B player. And so can you talk about that and how you work that leader development? I know you got an assessment tool, and I
Yeah.
worry about the B and C players that could be A players if somebody didn't throw them away.
Yeah. First and foremost, one of the top responsibilities of the entrepreneur owner is to put an A player in every seat on the bus. But I want to be careful based upon your question or your concern, because I think it's legitimate. Your job is not only to hire A players, you're fortunate if you can find them. And an A player, let's just be clear on the definition. An A player, in my standard, is somebody that embodies the core value purpose alignment in the company, behaves consistent with those values and purpose at a very high level. So on a scale of 1 to 10, they're 9s and 10s in embodying my values. And you don't need to go to Harvard or any fancy school to get a 9 or 10 on that criteria. Number 2, and by the way, you can make $12 an hour or you can make $2 million a year and still be a 9 or 10 in that criteria. The
Amen.
second criteria is productivity as required for your specific role. So every role, if you're going to fund a position in your company, you should have a very clear understanding of the KPI results that make that role fundable and valuable for your company. If you can't do that, you shouldn't have that role in your company. Forget who the person is, it's the role. So if I'm a salesperson and one of my KPIs is 10 proposals a quarter and 20,000 in booked revenue a quarter, let's say, at the end of the quarter, I'm going to be evaluated on my core value embodiment and my ability to deliver on that. If
Sure.
I'm in customer service, maybe it's going to be client satisfaction scores have to be 8 or better to be in the top quadrant. And the amount of callback time, everybody gets called back in 1 day or less. Simple things. And then we review that with them once a quarter. They know where they stand. And you have 1 or 2 decisions as a leader. Number 1, if somebody quarter after quarter with coaching, support, and education cannot get to that A-player standard or values and productivity, you can either coach, you can either give them another position in the company where they could be successful. You can give them a little more time as long as they've been trying and progressing, or you can top grade them and let them find another company where they could be successful, which I
Sure.
think the stewardship of any leader is to allow your people to find success, hopefully with me, but if not with me, with somebody.
Great.
2 mistakes leaders make. They're not used to coaching, mentoring, and developing people because they used to be the top salesperson putting out fires and making all the tactical decisions. So now somebody waved a wand and said, Ben, you can't spend as much time developing business. You have to spend time developing your 7 top leaders in your company. And when have you been doing that in the last 20 years? Let's say you haven't. 2 things come up. Number 1, you have to have the patience to coach people up because a lot of leaders don't have the patience to develop people. It can be slow. It can be painful. Think of raising your children. There's moments in raising a child, if you're not patient, there's no way they would have grown up to be successful men and women. The second part is courage. When that employee is not developing, not engaged, and not motivated to do what they need to do, you need the courage to put them in another job or top grade them out of another job in your company where they can be an A player or top grade them out. And I think some entrepreneurs have a problem with that.
Exactly. I've seen it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something I talk about when I'm teaching is that a lot of times people get promoted and into leadership positions because they are great tactical people. Like
Mm.
it's what you do and what you produced and your output is what got you to that next level. However, once you're in that next level, you've got to now move from being tactical to strategic. To your point, you now have to coach and mentor and develop. And by the way, nobody tells you when you move into a management role that you're also now kind of the department therapist. And I say that because you start to find out all sorts of information you were probably not prepared to be faced with as a leader. You hear people's personal struggles, family struggles, career struggles, and everything else. And they kind of look to you as the person to help them get past where they're at to that next thing. And I think that's probably one of those things that a lot of leaders aren't necessarily prepared for when they move into that leadership role.
When this really helped me, when you're a small mid-market company, you see a good employee, you have an opening for a promotion, you give it to them. It's convenient, they're good, they're loyal, you want to keep them. But what I learned was in a leadership promotion, it's high risk. If you hire somebody from the outside and you don't get it right, it can screw you up and you don't know them till you hire them. But if you promote the person from within that was good at the past job and you promote them and it doesn't work out, you lose them completely and you don't get them doing the previous job that they were really good at. So, one of the things that we learned on the journey was you need to de risk the promotion. How do you do that? You need to give people a testing ground, these little exercises to see if they're going to be good. For example, I want to promote Ben to a leader role. I'm going to have you lead a committee first in the company for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
How do you lead? Do you have objectives? Do you get follow through? And do you get results? Maybe I'm going to give you a project separate from a committee. I'm going to give you a key client with some measurable objectives, and you have to run that through and let's see how you progress. Maybe I want to promote you to a bigger job, managing a team of 10, but for the next 6 months, I'm going to give you a small group of 3 or 4 people to see how you deal with a team lead versus a manager job. So if you're thinking that way, you still may make a mistake, but your risk goes down dramatically by going through this protocol before you do it. And most people don't do that.
Yeah, I will say when I was working with Coca-Cola, they used to have a really good bench program that did exactly that, getting people who were up and coming leaders, putting them on rotations into different roles, different responsibilities, giving them different exposures to the company before they kind of advance them into other leadership capabilities. Um,
Ben, just one final point,
yeah,
because I
go for
want
it.
listeners to know someday by using some of those best practices before making those leadership assignments. You're absolutely right. But Coke is a great example of that. That's how they got successful, is
Right.
doing those hard things.
Yeah, and the benefit that I think those GEs, Coca-Colas, IBMs, Apples, the big guys on the block have is they also have usually very expensive consulting groups working with them all the time to help them refine their practices and help them
Yeah.
get better. And when you're a smaller, medium-sized organization, and by the way, I mean, even doing 50, $100 million a year in sales is still kind of considered a small business, even though it would be phenomenal success for a lot of people. It's still, you're still on the growth path, if you will. So, Herb, as we're kind of getting to the backside of things here, I want to get into your business, your company, and what you do with Aspire. What was your foundations for starting this thing? I know you mentioned that you had the family business, you transitioned out of that, you started on your own thing, greatly inspired by the book that you had read. But what kind of drives what you do today and the passion around your work?
Yeah. I think watching my father and then working with my coach, Bill Chaplin, and knowing that if entrepreneurs had the right support, that they could scale easily, quickly, and do a lot more good in the world than those of us who didn't have that benefit, that got stuck, got stopped, dealt with drama. I've had friends that started companies, loved it, grew drama, complexity, ended up falling out of love with their business. What was supposed to be their biggest dream turned into a nightmare because the business started to own them versus them owning their business. And I didn't want it. I don't want that to happen to people. I think we can all have happy endings of purpose and profit and help a lot of people get bigger futures if we can do it correctly. And we've learned how to do it correctly. And I want to share that with as many business owners in the world that I can.
Yeah, it's funny. I would say that we identify at Dist Media a lot with what you're doing. One of the things that I always talk about is kind of, I think this is becoming my catchphrase, but I always say, our goal here is to help managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do. And that's a very simple, but also very broad statement because there's a lot that goes into getting better at what you do.
Mm.
And our focus is to try and provide information and insight drawn from practical business practices along with kind of the most current research going on in these areas of running a business to try and bring that to people. But what you talk about in the work that you do, I think, is very much more, I would say it's more specialized in that you partner with people, you get in the trenches with them, you kind of the way that I kind of hear it is you go to battle with them while also tuning them up and helping them face those challenges of taking their business to the next level, which is a far more personal touch than I think that anything that we're doing with the work that we're trying to do. Which is awesome because to me that is some great opportunity just to not only learn about these other businesses and environments, but just a great opportunity, I think, to get better. Because I will, as we're kind of wrapping up here, I'm curious about this. Considering some of the work that you've done lately, what do you think is something that has surprised you the most, or maybe caused you to shift your paradigm a little bit because of something that you've learned?
I think what I've always enjoyed is seeing the growth of leadership teams over time. Like you meet an owner, you meet their existing leadership team. How do I say this? And maybe it doesn't feel very strategic in the type of conversations and the type of work they're doing. But then you spend the next 6 to 12 months helping them see more clearly the vision and get more strategic with how they're going to have a plan to get there. And then you attend their meeting and you hear the quality of the conversations, the critical thinking. It's not like my gut tells me to hire this person, but they now have a thoughtful process and they have data to back it up and they have passion of why they want to get their purpose, not just get a paycheck. So when I see that all coming together, it just lights me up because I know this is a group of people that are on fire that are going to accomplish some pretty amazing things. And I think that's why I get up every day. I love that feeling when you see it.
So Herb, let's I want to make sure that we give some good coverage to how people can learn more about you, the work you're doing, or even reach out to you and engage with you. What are some of the things that you're working on? How do people get in touch with Herb to get involved with Aspire Growth?
Yeah. Very simply, go to my website, aspiregrowthadvisors.com. On my website, for anybody who wants to see what their current scaling up readiness is for their company, we have an assessment, Discover Your Business Scaling Up Readiness Score. Feel free to do that. And for those CEOs that want to see and assess their leadership impact, I have Discover Your High Impact CEO Score. So the first step is diagnosis, and that's a great way to get started to see how you can take your company to the next level.
Herb, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and wanting to spend a little bit of time with us, helping to learn more about you and the work that you're doing.
I thank you both, and I'm grateful for being on the show. If you need anything, any follow up, any additional information, reach out. And I wish you the best on your venture. And to all your listeners, again, keep scaling, all of us.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You have a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Herb.
guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Disc Media, A Startup Story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of Disc Media Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@discmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes or information about our guests by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.